Good afternoon. This meeting will come to order. Thank you all for being here. My name is Representative John Hardisser. I represent District 59 in Guilford County, just down the road. I want to thank you all for your attendance. I'd like to also thank my colleagues from the House and Senate who are here today. We have Representative Pirtle from Rockingham County, Representative Hurtado from Alamance County, Representative Harrison from Guilford County, Representative Quick from Guilford County, and in the Senate we have to my left Senator Edwards and Senator Galey, who is from Alamance County. I've also been instructed to send regrets from Representative Riddell, who represents part of Alamance County, that he could not be here today. This will be a listening session. We're here to listen to you all. I will note that the House and Senate Redistricting Committee does have a website. You can access the website at ncleg.gov. And if you go there, there's an icon for redistricting that you can click on. This meeting is being recorded. All of the redistricting committee's activities and documents and so forth will be archived on the website. Speakers have 2 minutes, and when that time commences, the Sergeant Arms will signal once you've reached 1 minute, and then the Sergeant Arms has a stop sign that will be held up when you reach the 2 minute maximum. We are going to start with, we have a list of speakers who signed up online. So we'll start with that list, and once we get through this, we have a list of speakers who signed up in person. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. The first speaker we have signed up is John Hartwell. John Hartwell. Oh, and yeah, thank you. My co-chair over here has reminded me, if you'll suspend for 1 minute, I'd like to also recognize our Sergeant at Arms who are here, who do a great job working for us at Raleigh. We appreciate them being here. In the Senate, we have Dwight Green right over here to your left. And then to your right, we have Glenn Wall from the House. And also, of course, would like to thank our General Assembly Police for being here, Sergeant Walters and Officer Torres. Thank you all very much. With that said, Mr. Hartwell, the floor is yours.
You got me here? Good.
Yes, sir.
So I am John Hartwell. I'm from Hillsboro. I live just south of town on a pond. There are 4 families. Our houses are clustered pretty close around the water, and the properties all run for quite a few acres on back from the pond. We live out in the woods. We take our community activities and our responsibilities real seriously. So one of those responsibilities, of course, is about voting, and I believe everybody there has voted in every election that's been for certainly 20 years, and our right to equal representation, which the Constitution guarantees us, is real important to us. And my message from my neighborhood to y'all is you're being watched. You know, the last time we went through redistricting, it was something of a fiasco. One member of the House committee, I believe, bragged that he had secured the greatest partisan advantage that would be possible. And now the worst of those maps were finally thrown out by the courts as unconstitutional. But we split counties, we even split precincts, and the general impression that people had was that there was an unpopular state legislature trying to maintain their power by putting the onus, the expense, and the burden on county election officials and deprive the citizens of their rights. And so please, let's don't do that again. Let's not have any bragging about partisan advantage. Let's put out the maps, get everybody see the maps well ahead, secure comments on those maps, and let everybody have some faith again in American government.
Thank you. Thank you. And the chair apologizes in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. I'll do the best I can. Next, we have Irving Sabaleta Jimenez.
Good afternoon. My name is Irving Sabaleta. I use he and elle pronouns, and I have been a resident of Burlington, North Carolina for the past 21 years. I know that you're aware that district lines must take into account the standard deviation, but I am here to demand that you protect communities of color and East Burlington from being split. Most of the members in East Burlington are Black, Latinx, and working class families. While we are not uniform, we are a community of interest here in the county. We play together, we eat Southern food at the gas station at the corner of Church Street and Beaumont Avenue, at First State's Chinese restaurant at Compart Plaza, and the various taco and pupusa food trucks along North Church Street. I truly hope that you are here because you want to strengthen our democracy. One of the ways that you can do that is to avoid packing and cracking historically marginalized communities, especially communities of color. There should be no reason why the current House District 13 is in a shape that looks like a swamp. I ask that you draw lines that are compact, that protect working families, and that you abide by the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and that you do not dilute the voting power of Blacks and other members of communities of color as well.
Thank you. Next, we have Lisa Marinas. Lisa Marinas. Okay. Next, we have Alan, and I don't know if I can pronounce his name, Schlubier?
That's right. Hello, my name is Alan Schluckbeer. I've been a resident of Alamance for 21 years. I'm speaking today before redistricting. It's a process of drawing and mapping the districts for which our public officials are elected for the U.S. House of Representatives and the North Carolina House and Senate. By law, redistricting is required each decennial census. That means every 10 years. Now, our forefathers thought about this and realized that our population would change, and with that, our representation requirements will change. I am here to plead that we have an independent committee to draw these maps. These maps can be drawn by a software. It's real easy. It's real hard to keep the bias out. The bias that is so tempting with all this census data of age and race and ethnicity and location, which is easily translated into income. And it's really tempting for incumbents to use this. And it's also tempting for candidates. And I've been out on the road with candidates, and I know how difficult it is for, so some of these candidates to meet with people in these districts. So please, talk to your representatives. And your natives. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Beth, McKee, Huger.
Good evening. I'm Reverend Beth McKee Huger. Just have 2 points that we need to have at this point. Nonpartisan criteria for setting the maps. Voters need to be able to choose their representatives rather than the party dividing up the voters into partisan strongholds where there's safe seats for somebody and no opportunity for competition from anybody else. If I'm in a district where my party is in the majority, it's a safe seat. If I'm in a district where my party is in the minority, the elected person has no reason to listen to me. The second point is that after using nonpartisan criteria, there needs to be transparency with the maps, the draft maps that are drawn, so that everybody gets a chance to look at them, to comment on them, and to make sure that there were not any inadvertent or intentional lines that would divide the community and keep there from being competitive process. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Chris Malone.
Before I start, a quick dad joke. Do you know what you get when you cross a snowman and a vampire? Frostbite. My name is Chris Malone, and I live in Guilford County near Jamestown, a small community between High Point and Greensboro. I'm a precinct chair in the county, and my precinct, FR2, has 2,429 registered voters, 35% unaffiliated, 33% Republican, and 31% Democratic. In the 2020 election, the precinct saw 88% of registered voters cast ballots. I'm proud to be part of a precinct that turns out to vote. As a concerned citizen and voter, I ask the North Carolina legislature to simply be fair in drawing new maps. Here's how I believe fair voting districts can be created. Balanced, drawn by independent, nonpartisan commissions to not give any political party or demographic unfair advantage. No gerrymandering. Compact and congruent. Keep neighborhoods, precincts, and community areas together, not sliced and diced into partisan or demographic parcels. No gerrymandering. The current maps for Guilford and Forsyth counties are neither compact nor congruent. Transparency. The redistricting process should publish draft district maps for public review and comment before being finalized. Districts should be drawn so that candidates and ideas are the drivers in elections, with no influence from how the map is drawn. No gerrymandering. I hope that you agree with me and will use fair and common sense guidelines in creating new maps. I'll close with this. In April, the Texas Republican Party chairman, Alan West, wrote, and I quote, "Republicans control this process and must realize the strategic opportunity and not concern themselves with fairness to the progressive socialist left." Is this what we want to see with redistricting in North Carolina? I hope not. If it is, we'll be back in the courts again. If it's done fairly in the first place, it's a win for all voters. I believe the citizens of North Carolina deserve fairness. We'll know it when we see it. Thank you for your time and service to our state.
Thank you. Next, we have Peter Boykin.
Okay. Name's Peter Boykin, and thank you for protecting our constitutional republic. I want to disclose I am running for Congress in this district, and I'm hoping that we have a district that is well-rounded, done properly, and protected, and that I do note that a lot of people here are talking about making sure things are fair and not gerrymandered. I would like to call out if it was the opposite side, then they wouldn't be saying the same thing. But that's still very difficult for the side that's having the legislature now to handle things, and I'm glad that they're fairly doing this and having these. So we do not have problems in the future, because obviously that was the problem last time. And as a candidate, and all candidates would know, we don't want districts changing every 2 years or every 4 years. We'd hope we can get something solid, keep something solid. I do implore the board that if it gets to the point, because I know it's a difficult task, that things are not super rushed, that you do move back the dates for registering and the primary to give us more time to run. It's been a very difficult time running, not knowing what we're doing. And I thank y'all very much for all of y'all doing, and hopefully everybody will be listened to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Donna Van Hook.
Good evening, sir and ma'am. Okay, sorry. Good evening, sir and ma'am, members of North Carolina Legislature. My name is Donna Van Hook. I live in Burlington, what we would call East Burlington. And there has been some statements made about East Burlington. I would like to say there is discrepancy now about a Western Electric site where the building has contaminants. And so from that building, 4 miles towards the what we would call West Burlington, there is an 11-year difference in life expectancy. And that has been reported in the 2018 Community Health Improvement Plan. And so I also want to state that I would like to see fair and just mapping, just like everyone else who has spoken before, especially mapping that will be beneficial to communities of color. I would like to see revitalization on the east side of Burlington, what we call East Burlington, because it is predominantly black and brown, and there are a lot of issues like food insecurity versus the other side of town, which we call West Burlington. So I'm speaking today on behalf of North Carolina Black Alliance for redistricting, which was fair and just, and also as a resident of Burlington for there to be better situations involved in the mapping for black and brown communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Brittany Carter. Apologize. You're good. You're recognized.
Okay, so my name is Brittany Carter. I've lived in Alamance County for 33 years. I do believe that the redistricting, I would like to see the map before, I make a comment whether I like it or I'm opposed to it. I do believe that if we only have one hearing public comment before y'all kind of put it as firm, I would like to ask if we could have 2 public hearing comments after, once we get to see it, they can do public comments, and then maybe have a revised after if some people are not okay with what was produced, and then kind of reiterating no gerrymandering, try and keep it fair. I believe that my vote counts. I want it to count. I think everybody's vote should count. And I don't think that this 2020 election proved integrity, voter integrity. I also feel like if we have on our ballots serial numbers to track, registered voters, and they have their own ballot that's for them, they have a serial number, we can actually track it and keep up with who's voting where. And I don't discount the mail-in ballots, but I don't think that able-bodied people should have that option. If they are able to get up and get out, they should be able to get up and get out to vote if they are registered. For the elderly, I do believe that that is absolutely, or the disabled, I do believe that that should be it is a valid thing. So I'm just asking that once we see the maps, once we get all the comments in, if we can have another public hearing and then maybe go over some things that could possibly be changed, that would be awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us in Alamance County. My name is Ian Baltudis, and it's my honor to serve as the mayor of Burlington, North Carolina, but today I represent myself in my personal capacity. I've walked neighborhoods and known residents here in our community since 2012. And as I've walked and talked to people, they've expressed confusion about the districts as they've been laid out over that time frame. We've had to describe it with all kinds of different shapes and styles. And what I'm asking for is dense and logical and representative districts here in Alamance County, particularly ones where you don't have to describe, well, if they live across the street, they're represented by someone different than here and someone different than behind you. Burlington represents a very diverse population. 50% of our population is classified as BIPOC, and that's something that I think we really need to make sure is represented when we draw these districts, something that our community as an engine of the economy of Alamance needs to make sure that we have representation that really helps drive Burlington's success today and into our future. So just want to thank you all for your time and your efforts in this process.
Thank you. The chair was just informed that we are at capacity in this room, but there are some folks outside who would like to come in. So if you're inclined, you certainly don't have to, but if you want to step out so others can come in, I'll leave that at your discretion. Okay. Right. Okay, next we have Omar Lugo.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for everything that you all doing for our county. My name is Omar Lugo, and I'm just a simple citizen of this county. I don't even consider myself a citizen of any special class, but what I came here to say is that we applauded the openness and transparency. The General Assembly has committed into drawing maps during opening, during redistricting committee meetings, and to listen to public input as they are through these hearings. Thank you so much for that. The main point here is that I hear many people talking about communities of interest, black and brown, et cetera, et cetera. Why don't we keep the integrity of our communities as such? The only colors that we should defend and we keep in mind in United States of America are the blue, red, and white. And that's how we should keep it. Therefore, communities of interest do not dominate the process. There's no common understanding of what a community of interest is. So a community of interest is in the eye of the beholder. It is appropriate that claims of communities of interest are only considered after other redistricting criteria have been satisfied. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Jennifer Bremer.
Good afternoon. My name's Jennifer Bremer, and I'm an Orange County voter. Redistricting requires a dialogue between the voters and the legislators. So I would like to thank you for holding this hearing here in Alamance and for committing to engage the voters in the redistricting process. Drawing our redistricting maps is a task that our legislature takes on in trust to the voters of North Carolina. Discharging this critical duty in an unbiased manner is vital to our representative democracy. This complex task is made all the more challenging by the severe conflict of interest inherent in drawing your own districts. Many of you are lawyers or business people. You know how damaging such conflicts are, but we're stuck with the flawed system that we have for now and must rely on your commitment to uphold your constitutional duty to the voters and to our Constitution itself. The North Carolina Constitution is crystal clear on this point. Quote, all political power is vested in and derived from the people. All government of right originates from the people, is founded upon their will only, and is instituted solely for the good of the whole. The people of this state have the inherent, sole, and exclusive right of regulating the internal government, end quote. The legislator's oaths of office, which you're familiar with, of course, binds each of you to support our state constitution and to faithfully discharge your duty under that constitution. We rely on all of our representatives to take this responsibility to heart, but we stand with Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. Consequently, while we appreciate this opportunity to speak to you now, the hearings after draft maps are drawn are the most important ones. In the 2011 redrawing, there were 3 rounds of hearings after the first maps were drawn, each bringing in 7 to 10 sites. And we didn't even have Zoom then, so it's much easier now. We know that you can do better. Voters must be heard. Our Constitution and the oath you have sworn to uphold demand no less. So we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Donald McKinnon.
Good afternoon. I'm Don McKinnon from High Point. With a population of 114,000, High Point is the 9th largest city in North Carolina. In spite of our many challenges, most residents feel that High Point feels like a city and functions like a city. But the redistricting of the past has slashed our city to pieces, as if we did not matter. I'm here today to ask you to keep High Point whole during each step of the redistricting process. Today I'll focus on House seats 60 and 62. Here is the current map. The ideal population for each House seat is about 87,000, which means High Point cannot constitute one district. But how a city is split lies at the heart of any redistricting effort anywhere in the country. High Point is 45.5% white, 54.5% non-white. This map has produced a black rep in H60 to the south and a white rep in H62 to the north. Both are residents of High Point, but at what cost? What's the problem with this map? It's not compact, that's the problem. Most important, it pairs High Point voters in H62 with voters in northern Guilford County. In fact, 59% of registered voters in H62 live outside High Point. High Point shares a natural affinity with Greensboro. That anyone in northern Guilford County would have a good understanding of High Point's needs is doubtful. But if H62 stands as it is, we face the possibility of an incumbent who at some future date knows nothing about us. We can do better. With this map, drawn with Maptitude for redistricting software, it emphasized keeping High Point whole. High Point represents about 2/3 of the 2 districts combined, and we have paired High Point only with voters who live close to our borders. In conclusion, this new map will probably still elect a black rep from H60 and a white rep from H62 just as now. The difference, 2 districts which offer our residents fair and more effective representation because the districts will be more compact, because voters will be closer to the representatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ed Priola.
Two later.
Good evening. In the interest of transparency, I'm a candidate for Alamance State House District 63. I'm from Mebane. There was a recent meeting that I attended, about 40 or 50 people. Some candidates were there. One candidate for the state legislature stood up and somewhat arrogantly claimed that he had inside information on a district and the way the district would be drawn. If his claim was true, of course that's wrong. This process should be transparent, and we should have equal access to the information of how the process and the districts play out. Regardless of party, the information should be of equal access to every candidate and, in fact, every citizen. And I would join with the citizen that spoke up a little bit ago and say, this should not be your last meeting. We should know what the districts are and then have the opportunity to comment on those districts. Individual insider information should never take place. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Tyler Day.
Thank you for holding this hearing today. This past year, I was excited. It's the first time I felt I had a representative in Washington who actually represented my community as a community. That's because my community was kept together in one congressional district for the first time in my life. In my first experience with voting, I learned of the congressional district I would be voting in, and I was stunned. The district stretched in a skinny line down I-85 from where I live outside of Greensboro all the way to Charlotte. And as I learned more, I found out that I and other black North Carolinians had been packed into the district strategically. A Democratic candidate would win the district by a margin of 50%. So I never really felt that my vote mattered, and I didn't feel as though I had a representative focused on my community. This upset me and encouraged me to get involved in what I believe is one of the civil rights issues of our time, fair voting districts. I learned about our past maps, like the ones drawn by the Democrats in 1992, which Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor said were so extremely irregular on its face that it rationally can be viewed only as an effort to segregate the races for the purpose of voting. Then I watched in awe when I heard a state representative propose in 2016 that the district should be drawn to, and I quote, gain a partisan advantage to 10 Republicans and 3 Democrats. I realized whichever party that's been in power has always drawn the districts to their liking. I'm now an organizer with Common Cause North Carolina, and I'm asking you not to follow in the footsteps of your predecessors. The redistricting criteria the committee approved only says you may consider communities of interest. I thought the whole purpose of having a representative democracy was to have someone represent your community. If you believe that's the case, I believe you do, please make keeping communities together your primary focus when you redraw the districts. And please hold public hearings across the state after the maps are drawn so we, the public, can react to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Phyllis Dimko.
Good evening. I'm Phyllis Dimko, and I represent the League of Women Voters of North Carolina State Board. We appreciate your having these hearings, but I have to be frank with you. We're wondering how much you really care about hearing from the public, and these are some of our reasons. For example, your hearing schedule has totally missed 2 very important population centers, Guilford County and Wake County. There's been very little in way of public announcement about these hearings. You give us 5 days at most notice, and it's not really well publicized in social media or the newspapers. We really want to read the comments that are being put on the portal. There's no indication yet that you will let us do that. We hope that you will. That gives us some concern about whether or not you're even going to bother to read them. Though you may not be interested in what the public has to say, we are vitally interested in what you're doing, because we know that what you do now will affect what we do for the next 10 years. In 2019, a state court required you to do remedial maps in full public view. That is certainly something that means more than what you've indicated you're going to do. We want you to make your final decisions public, not do as you recently did with the criteria and the hearing schedule, where there was absolutely no discussion. It made us feel that you had already decided behind closed doors and then came out with the criteria. We, of course, want you to give us an opportunity to look at the maps and review those maps and comment upon those maps before they're voted on. All this is to say that we have concerns regarding public input and transparency, and we hope that you will address those. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lynn McCoy.
Thank you so much. Am I heard? Yes. We appreciate this. We appreciate these hearings. I'm Lynn McCoy, unaffiliated voter from Guilford County, and I'm here in Alamance County because there is no hearing in Guilford County. In fact, as I understand it, there are only hearings in only 10 out of the 100 counties in North Carolina. This is not transparency. This is not working for the voters. Many voters' voices are not being heard, even in spite of the portal. So please, this is not the way North Carolina voters should be treated. Our voices should be heard. I agree completely that the criteria should have been made public in some way so that people could comment on them. And I agree there should have been more notice about these hearings and certainly more publicity. It was very hard to find out about them. But we do appreciate your having them. Much has been said about communities of interest, and I agree that communities of interest, neighborhoods, and precincts and universities and others should be kept together because they have common needs and they need common representation. I don't believe there should be incumbent protection. I don't believe any seat should be protected. And it's not a matter of whose side you're on. It's a matter of what's right for North Carolinians. Gerrymandering is wrong no matter who does it. It does not serve the voters. And I hope that you're here for this hearing because you intend to do fair and just maps that will really represent the voters. This is what we need, and this is what North Carolinians deserve. The most important thing I want to say is what so many have said. We need hearings after the maps are drawn. We need more hearings than 10 counties. We need them publicized, please. And I think it's a great idea to have one right after the maps and then one again after input. But certainly more hearings after the maps are drawn. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Next, we have Peggy Fairby.
Hello, I'm Peggy Fairby, and thank you very much for hearing us. I'm from Summerfield, North Carolina. I first became interested in redistricting when I would go into my voting booth in various districts that I have lived in and discovered that, well, I needn't have shown up because I really didn't have a choice. Either there was no competition or it was so overwhelmingly gerrymandered that there was really no point in voting for anyone else. And you know what? That made me mad because voting is the very bedrock of our democracy. We're supposed to be the greatest democracy in the world, and we can't get this right. I mean, right now, we're having trouble with assault on our entire electoral process. You talk to young people, and they're very, very critical and very cynical of the program, and it's stuff like this, where they feel that it doesn't matter what they do because y'all are going to do what you want to do. The only input we have is our votes. So please, I beg of you, make this a fair, transparent process. Don't divide up communities like pieces of a pie to assure someone's election. We should have hearings. I agree, we should have hearings more than just in 10 counties, and we need to have hearings afterwards so that people can comment on the maps. Democracy starts right here at this level with y'all and with all of us. So if you want us, I have grandchildren. I want them to grow up in the kind of country I grew up with. I need y'all to be on board with us. Please make it a fair, transparent, and well-publicized event. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Anthony Pierce.
Mr. Chair, it might not be a rule, but the people behind me said they'll yield their time to me. No, I'm just joking. Good evening. My name is Anthony Pierce. I live in Hall River, but in the Melville community just up the road from here. I come here today representing the Alamance branch of the NAACP, where I serve as the Political Action Committee Chair and the first Vice President. First and foremost, thank all of you for your service to this great state, to Alamance County, and whatever jurisdictions that you may come here representing. As chair of the Political Action Committee, one of our top priorities and top goals is to work to ensure that the voting process is fair and is convenient for all, without unnecessary barriers that would suppress or restrict any Alamance County resident from being able to exercise that most basic fundamental right that's afforded to them, which is to vote. Our focus have always been on the historically underserved, the underrepresented, the elderly, the marginalized communities across this county. But we need your help. As you redraw the districts across this great state and across Alamance County, we ask that you ensure the districts are drawn in a compact fashion to prevent confusing voters and splitting communities. There are about 38 or so precincts in Alamance County. Districts should not be drawn that split precincts, as they also further confuse voters. And it also makes it even harder for our election staff to perform and execute elections. Communities should stay together. We share common interests and we face the same problems, and therefore should always stay together. Divided neighborhoods will only further complicate that and should never be done. In closing, failure to consider these nonpartisan basic requests goes against the very fabric of our democracy and undermines the bipartisan provisions that are outlined in the Voting Rights Act. Thank you for your time and thank you for your service.
Thank you. Next, we have James Adams.
Good evening. I'm James Adams from High Point, North Carolina. Glad to be here with you this evening to share a request that we have fair and equitable voting process here in this redistricting process. There's a lot of conversation that you've heard from this floor about the concerns that we have. Let's address those concerns. I was not here a few years ago with the last redistricting, but I'm living through the results. We need to fix this. We need to fix it now. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 afforded us the opportunity to have fair and equitable voting process. We need to practice it. We need to be committed to it and do what we can to have our children enjoy the voting process or the results of the voting process that we see and we work for today. Let's not make the same mistakes. Let's fix it. Let's do it now. Let's be mindful of a gentleman, Mr. McKinnon, that what he presented to us. Let's consider that. Let's look at the information that's on his boards and his paperwork. It's only going to happen if you're committed. It's only going to happen if you're committed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have C. Bradley Hunt. C. Bradley Hunt. T. Anthony Spearman.
Thank you. I am the Reverend Dr. T. Anthony Spearman, resident of Greensboro, and as a matter of fact, I am within your jurisdiction, Chair Hardister, so I need your cell phone number. And I am also the state conference president of the North Carolina NAACP. Political parties are nothing but the instruments of tyranny when they degenerate into agents of chaos and cease to represent progressive justice. All our polarized politics is producing is pain. It is for the people who are the sovereign in this nation to see to it that parties conserve the public interest. That is why we are here. It is pure nonsense to expect others to perform this duty for us. Having attended 2 redistricting committee criteria meetings, and this makes 4 of the 6 public hearings held thus far, I have enough information to know that what the people want are fair and just maps. Maps that allow voters to choose who their representatives will be, rather than maps that allow legislators to pick who they want to represent them in elections that predetermine the winners. In short, the maps should be about the people and not about politicians or incumbency. The map should be a fair representation of the rich diversity in the state of North Carolina. But at the rate we're going, we will never achieve that as long as we continue to present ourselves as a bunch of ideological contortionists purporting to be politicians. What we, the people, truly need are more public servants. Public servants will produce fair maps. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Peter O'Connell.
Thank you. I am Peter O'Connell. I'm a resident of Guilford County, and I am an active Republican voter. I urge the legislators to carry out the duties that they were elected to perform. We have a redistricting process. It is a legislative process, and I urge you to follow it. Do what is fair, do what is right, and that is to follow the rules and not to change them again in the middle of the game. Nothing could be more certain to create division, additional cost, and cynicism on the part of the voters. We have a redistricting process and we should follow it. Speakers say that you should listen to the people. Those who urge you to delegate your responsibilities, in fact, seek to overturn the will of the people. The people already have spoken. They've elected their chosen representatives, including all of you, and I ask you to please do the job that you were elected to do. And I also ask you to please disregard the so-called nonpartisan expert route. There is no such thing as a nonpartisan expert. We have seen that in other states that have tried that route. What is actually envisioned is people who have failed to obtain their desired goals at the ballot box, trying to obtain control of this process by other means. And I would urge legislators to carry out their functions. Please do what you were elected to do. Do not delegate your duties to people who are not answerable to the public. Respect all people, respect each other, cooperate where possible, but follow the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Elliott Lynch.
Good evening. My name is Elliott Lynch, and thank you for having me available to speak tonight. I want to speak from my heart and from my experience. I've been living in Alamance County for almost 30 years now. I grew up on a farm, sharecroppers, and one of the highlights of our year was to load up in the car with my parents and go vote. And since that time in my life, voting has been very important to me. The political process has been very important to me, and I'm here to give you some, not things to do, but things that I plead you not to do. I've been a chief judge in my precinct for a number of years. I ran for office a number of times. I believe in the political process. I believe in being fair, and I love people. So I'm asking you to do this for the people, particularly the people of Alamance County. We are a wide and diverse community. We have farmers to our south and north. We have urban areas in Burlington and our cities. And I ask and I plead with you not to do these things. Please don't split up our neighbors. Please do not split up Alamance County. Do not split up our precincts, our cities, not our state legislative districts or our District 13. Right now, we're sitting a 5-minute drive from Orange County, and the end of District 13 is almost in Charlotte, Cabarrus County. And that doesn't make sense to me and doesn't make sense to a lot of people. So I ask you to consider to make these districts compact and be fair. And as a matter of fact, one other thing I like to mention, when I go vote, I pass a church 2 blocks from my house and drive several miles because the district across the street is a different district. So please consider that, and thank you, and please be fair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. L. Harris.
Good evening, committee. We do appreciate you offering the opportunity for us to have a hearing and public speak today. However, as a resident of Rockingham County, I'm extremely concerned that many of my other residents, as well as others in counties, are not represented here today. There's a lot of families that are not even given the opportunity because of lack of public transit to be able to come to the public hearings that you're offering today. I will say it is extremely important to realize that a public hearing is really for the public. Offering live stream like it was the last time was not a perfect process, but it did allow more transparency. Having transparency is extremely important as it relates to encouraging and promoting trust in our legislators and in our public processes. I ask each of you to please consider everything that you hear everyone talk about today. But remember, live, in-person hearings mean you have to be willing to listen to the public. But in order to listen to the public, you must host it at locations that require less than 200 capacity. You must allow an opportunity for redistricting to educate the public on what the education of redistricting means. Please, again, I'm from Rockingham County. My neighboring counties, I drove all the way to Forsyth County the other day. After I got off work, I got there too late, but I made it today because I had to get off work early. So I'm encouraging you, understand there's many North Carolinians that are not represented today. Thank you.
Thank you. Alejandro Garcia. Alejandro Garcia.
Everybody, how's everybody doing?
My name is Alejandro Garcia, and I've been living in Burlington for over 20 years now. This is my hometown. As a resident of Burlington, Alamance County, I'm here to highlight the need for fair and transparent maps in order for communities of color to stop being segregated. As a Latino, I don't want to see neighborhoods, bus stops, or schools segregated in order to fulfill elected officials' political agenda. According to the 2020 census, North Carolina Latino population has seen a 40% growth. In this same manner, all minorities and communities of color have grown. According to the census, populations who identify as multiracial saw an increase of around 276% nationally. This is why I joined everybody in this group to ask you to draw these districts so my kid and neighbors have representatives who represent them, who look like them and can share time with them, right? We are tired of having individuals in power who don't look like us or have the same interests in heart. Alamance County is a key county for North Carolina with a population of 174,000, 2020 census. Of that population, 29.3 identify as non-white. However, the current county commissioner board is entirely Caucasian. All of the current commissioners live within a 10-mile radius of the western part of Alamance County in a suburban area along the I-40 corridor. Meanwhile, 28.6% of Alamance County population live in a rural area. So fair and competitively drawn districts will serve the entire population of Alamance County by establishing a fair system that allows voters to elect candidates who are diverse both geographically and demographically. Thank you for your time and interest.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Ron Osborne.
Thank you. My name is Ron Osborne. I'm a 35-year resident of Alamance County, and before that I lived in Guilford County where I was born. And I live in southern Alamance County on a farm. I want to first compliment the legislature on the most recent maps. I would characterize them as less bad, but they're still not good. But at least you're making some incremental improvement at the behest of the courts and what folks see. The maps still guarantee safe seats for representatives. As the North Carolina Superior Court said back in 2019, the enacted maps do not permit voters to freely choose their representatives, but rather representatives are choosing voters based on sophisticated partisan sorting. It is carefully crafted and the will of the map drawer that predominates. The current maps marginally meet the letter of the law, but I question whether they meet the spirit of the law. And I think the data reveals that. Is it truly representative democracy? I take issue with those that are concerned about true representative democracy and think that we're disingenuous if we question the process and the maps that are provided. I myself have been a registered Republican as well as a registered Democrat. I've also served as a precinct worker, and I helped my neighbors vote differently than I would have voted. But that's okay, that's democracy. I just want to see a process and outcome that is true, fair, and equal. And I think an independent and nonpartisan commission is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Paul Walker. And while you're approaching the microphone, sir, Senator Gailey apologized that she had to leave for a previous commitment. You have the floor.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. I'm Paul Walker. That's not Paul Walker of the Fast and Furious fame. I'm the slow and old. But again, I do appreciate this opportunity, and I've been a resident of Alamance County now for about 40 years. I'm a retired agricultural agent, and I have traveled extensively in Guilford County, Alamance County, and quite a bit in Orange County. A lot of differences as you go from one part of the county to the other. As somebody has already mentioned, we go from a city to urban to suburban to rural. And I would like for y'all to at least consider geographical areas and populous areas, maybe put both of them together in drawing the maps. Perhaps look at townships, because within each township there is some commonality within each township. I think that's one thing that's missing. But the main thing I would like to say is please stop the political gerrymandering. I have lived here, like I say, 40 years. I've saw both parties do it, and then the resulting controversy and lawsuits is not pleasant to watch. So please, whatever you do, stop the political gerrymandering. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Cole Riley.
Thank you. Hello? Oh, thank you. Can you hear me okay? All right. My name is Cole D'Angelo Riley. I'm a senior political science student at North Carolina A&T. I skipped my U.S. presidency class to drive here 30 minutes to be here today. I guess Guilford County, which was home to one of the most egregious acts of partisan gerrymandering, was not included on this public hearing tour. The General Assembly split the largest HBCU in the nation into two, leaving us with diluted voting power and two representatives who did not represent, let alone reflect us. Splitting the voting power of 13,000 predominantly black students and the black population of East Greensboro is wrong, it's racist, and it's nonpartisan. It's partisan. But I fear similar tactics will be implemented again. Since I've been on campus, we've had elections scheduled during our spring break twice. We've had our on-campus voting site removed twice. These are not accidents, but a blatant attack on our university and the black population of East Greensboro. Do not gerrymander us into oblivion again. Gerrymandering allows you to effectively flip democracy on its head. So it allows our representatives to choose our voters, not our voters to choose our representatives. So as stated before, yes, some of the younger population has grown cynical and very critical of these institutions who have disenfranchised us. So our demands are clear. Do not gerrymander us into oblivion again. We want an independent committee to create these maps. We want an early polling site. We do not want it to be scheduled during our spring break. And we want our polling site to be on campus. And we also want these legislative sessions to be more accessible so I can go to class.
Thank you. Next, we have Jay Kennett.
Good evening. I'm Jay Kennett. I live in the city of Burlington, not far from downtown Burlington. The great mystery of every election is what my congressional district will look like. It changes every single time. In one incarnation, my neighbors a block away in the city of Burlington voted for a different congressional candidate. That is not just or fair or equitable. You have heard from the people here. We are here because we hope this time it will be different. We have no evidence to prove that it will, but we ask you to do what is right, to represent the people, and to create free elections and fair districts that are equitable, nonpartisan, and do not racially gerrymander. Thank you.
Thank you. And the chair received a note from Representative Quick, who apologizes that he had to leave for a 6:30 meeting at his church. Next, we have Peter Schley.
My apologies for perhaps difficult to read writing. It's Peter Shea, S-C-H-A-Y. I'm a resident of the city of Burlington in North Carolina House District 63. I'm here not representing any particular organization or any particular constituency other than voters who want good government where the voters choose their representatives rather than the politicians choosing their voters. I would like to reiterate a comment made by my friend Mr. Schluckbier, as well as others, in support of an independent redistricting commission. But in the absence of that, I am basically here to voice opposition to partisan gerrymandering, and I believe specifically that the redistricting process should focus on three things. First is compactness. The current shape of Congressional District 13 is an abomination. Second, congruency or respect for existing boundaries of county boundaries, city boundaries, and if necessary, precinct boundaries. And then finally, in support of others, that the redistricting should avoid the cracking of minority communities so that they are disenfranchised in their choice of representatives. And finally, I support the comment that have been made by several other speakers that after the proposed maps have been prepared, there should be another round of hearings to enable us to give our feedback on those proposed maps before they're finalized. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lee Haywood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Lee Haywood. I'm a longtime resident of Guilford County, live in Summerfield, and I have intentions to run again for the 6th District Congressional seat, and I want to address that here in a second. But I want to thank y'all for the tough job y'all are getting ready to do. You're not going to be able to please everybody, and this is my second hearing, and I've heard a lot of good suggestions, and one of the things that really strikes me is everybody wants a nonpartisan commission. There is no such thing. It's going to be partisan no matter how nonpartisan you try to make it. And I think since 2010, I think the process has become a lot more transparent than it was the 140 years it was before that. So I want to thank y'all for what you're doing. And I want to address the 6th District specifically. I remember when Guilford County was split into 3 different districts, one which ran from the eastern part of Guilford County to Raleigh. The other one snaked up from Charlotte all the way to Durham up I-85, and the rest belonged to Howard Coble. Now, it's a lot better now. I mean, Guilford County is whole, but you have divided Forsyth. Now, no offense to my peeps in Forsyth, I love them to death, but they deserve to be made whole again. And I ask y'all to take that into account when you're redistricting the whole state. Try to keep these counties as whole as possible. Now, of course, you're not always going to be able to do that, but as much as possible. It makes no sense for the 6th District to be rated a D18 and Ted Budd's district, the 13th District, which goes right around Guilford, an R1000. It makes no sense to have that. So let's, now is the time to fix it. I have faith that you will. I know a few of you that sit on that commission, and I just wish you well in the process. And I'll leave you with one thing. The fellow a little while ago gave you a joke. What do you call a hot dog with the middle taken out? A Halloweenie. Thank you, Chairman Hardister.
Thank you. We have reached the end of registered commentary. Is there anyone who signed up to speak but their name was not called? And the chair will confer with the Sergeant at Arms. Is there anyone waiting outside? Is there anyone who did not speak who wishes to speak? You're recognized. If you would, please state your name for the record. Thank you.
My name is Susan B. McClanahan. I'm from Orange County. Over the last decade, you spent almost $11 million of taxpayer money on litigation. I would like to encourage you to avoid that. We need that $11 million in order to pay for schools, health care. Can you hear me? Start again. My name is...
You're permitted to restart the time.
Thank you, gentlemen. My name is Susan B. McClanahan. I'm a resident of Orange County, nearly lifelong. During the last decade, you have spent nearly $11 million on litigation.
My microphone's doing the same thing.
Could you maybe go to the other podium, ma'am?
To go to the other one?
You'll change sides right here.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me now? Thank you. My name is Susan B. McClanahan. I'm from Orange County. Over the last decade, you spent nearly $11 million of taxpayer money on fighting in the courts to entrench yourselves in power. That is wrong, no matter who does it. It is right for you to listen to the will of the people. For years, you have ignored us when we wanted Medicaid expansion, health care for everyone in North Carolina, when we wanted good schools that have been starving since you have been in charge, when we have wanted rural hospitals to be able to survive. Medicaid would have helped with that. There have been so many things that the people of North Carolina have wanted that you have ignored. It's not okay for you to do that anymore. It is time for you to have 26 additional hearings across North Carolina once the draft maps have been shared. Those could be in the 13 current counties and in 13 others, so that there would be 2 hearings per congressional district. You can change the primary so that the deadline is not December 6th. You can move it to May, where it has been for years until you changed it. That would give us time to hear from the people of North Carolina, and it is required that we hear from the people of North Carolina. It's not okay for you to entrench yourselves in power. You need to share the map shape files once the drafts are presented, and without any delay, so that the Princeton Gerrymandering Project can assess them, so that the 2 other organizations can assess them, so that we know when we've been gerrymandered. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yes, sir, you're recognized. If you would please state your name for the record.
Yes. I'll give this to you also. My name is Tom Brokowski. Can you hear? And I'm an Orange County resident. Thank you for letting us speak this evening. I have some comments here made when I attended a previous meeting of the General Assembly during the last 10 years. First of all, I'm surprised that you do not have a presentation to the public to inform us of the redistricting process. You talk about it, but let's see what it is, along with the provisional maps that was done 10 years ago. When I lived in Watauga County, and our state representative, Jonathan Jordan, gave a video presentation of the redistricting process with maps that had been drawn at the time. Different redistricting models were explained, and many of us there thought the Iowa state plan was superior, as districts were compact and did not have the problem of dividing counties. Which model will you be using this time? What changes will be made because of the additional district? We wish to know. Secondly, the results of the 2020 census were later than usual, and you're starting late, as been mentioned by the previous speaker, with the information process, and you're running out of time. So good government requires that districting be transparent. So there should be these forums afterwards so that we may be able to see the final maps and to have an evaluation by the public. And I believe you could move back the time for filing, as was mentioned. You can do that. It doesn't take long to redistrict once you have a computer model, just a couple days. So let's do it and have these meetings afterwards. Thank you very much. Yeah, you can have
Thank
it.
you.
Sure.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Chair, I guess. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak?
I can do 2 more minutes.
Well, with that said, the chair apologizes that the battery in the microphone apparently is dying. We have reached the end of the public hearing. On behalf of my colleagues, I'd like to thank you all for your participation. I'd like to thank our Sergeant Arms and General Assembly Police and Alamance Community College. The chair will remind everyone that you can access the committee's website at ncleg.gov and then navigating to the redistricting icon. You can also submit comments online. With that said, the hearing is completed and we are adjourned.